Hello, good day and welcome to this session where we talk about which type of relationship is best to adopt. By the end of this session, you should be able to identify the factors that influence the type of relationship chosen, examine the suitable transactional approach, explain some drivers of collaborative relationship. The best type of relationship to adopt in a commercial transaction depends on the nature and importance of the item being purchased. That is how the value of the item on your finances, whether it occupies a significant part of your finances or it doesn't. It also depends on the competence, compatibility, and then capability of the supplier. Whether you are able to collaborate and work effectively with the supplier or not will determine whether you should adopt a transactional approach or you should adopt a collaborative approach. It also depends on the geographical distance, how close or far suppliers are from the focal firm. That will determine the investment in transport mileage, whether it's worth it or not, so as to determine the type of relationship to adopt. And the compatibility of the supply partners in terms of their systems, in terms of their operations, in terms of their employees, in terms of their culture, whether they can collaboratively work together to warrant possibly an outsourced relationship or a collaborative relationship. It also depends on the organization and purchasing functions, objectives, and priorities. What does the purchasing function prioritize? What does the organization prioritize, and what does the supplier prioritize? Do they prioritize cost over quality? Do they prioritize value for the customer, or they prioritize efficiencies within their operations? It also depends on the supply market conditions that are prevailing, whether there are a lot of suppliers or there are a few suppliers, whether the supply market is characterized by monopoly or the supply market is characterized by a perfect competition. These are some of the things that influence the type of relationship to adopt in a typical commercial relationship. The transactional approach to relationship is preferred over collaborative because the transactional approach helps secure best commercial deal and the biggest share of value when this is the priority of the relationship. This is seen because the transactional approach seems to have no regard for relationships and seeks to exploit the other party using the focal firm's leverage. Hence, if the goal of the organization is to secure best commercial deal, this approach is seen to be the best because you seem to get the best value in terms of cost, in terms of the biggest share of value. It is also preferred because it takes less time and effort in terms of resource commitment. In this instance, the buyer acquires the goods and services from whom they please, and there's no sort of integration, there's no sort of investment in resources, there's no sort of investment in development of the other party. And then it has little or no risk of supplier complacency, or there's the little likelihood for opportunistic behavior because the supplier or the focal firm determines who they want to acquire their product from, and there's a high likelihood or little cost of supplier switching, thereby reducing the tendencies of suppliers to depict opportunistic behavior and then to display tendencies of supplier complacency. What are some of the drivers or motivators for collaborative relationships? Collaborative relationships have been on the rise because competitive advantage has seen from firm-wide to supply chain-wide, where supply chains are seen to be competing among themselves instead of firms. Competition has moved from between firms to between supply chains. Hence, there is a need for actors in the supply chain, suppliers and buyers and customers alike, to collaborate and come together to work towards creation of value for the entire supply chain. Also, product life cycles have shortened, thereby creating the need for faster product development. So in order to reduce the time to market for products, actors in the supply chain have to collaborate and work together so as to deliver value to the customer within the shortest possible time. ICT developments have enabled and supported interorganizational networking and relationships. So there is systems integration, the exchange of information between suppliers and customers have reduced. The time to exchange information have reduced, thereby enhancing the need to collaborate and share information in terms of customer requirements and how research and development can facilitate development of new products to meet customer requirements. Also, there has been the pressure for firms to protect and leverage their intellectual property. This has necessitated the need for collaborative relationships because collaborative relationships are characterized by trust and commitment as well as information asymmetry. So when the firm wants to protect their intellectual property, they intend to prefer collaborative relationships over transactional relationships because in essence there is little information exchange in transactional relationships as compared to the collaborative relationships. What are some of the contexts in which partnership sourcing may be most beneficial? One, when the customer has a high spend with the supplier. As we saw, the nature of goods being exchanged determines the type of relationship to adopt. So when the goods have significant financial impact on the organization, then partnership sourcing will be the best approach to the organization. Also, when the customer faces high supply risk, then partnership sourcing is deemed appropriate because partnership sourcing will therefore seek to reduce the risk of supply shortage or supply interruptions. It helps to reduce the time to market of products. It helps to reduce the time for new product development, among others. Partnership sourcing is also beneficial when the product supplied is technically complex. In essence, both parties can complement each other and exchange information as to how they can best simplify the complexity surrounding the product by value engineering and then other processes of product development. It's also beneficial when the supply market is fast changing, thereby utilizing the research and development of the other party to come up with innovative solutions to counter competition. It's also beneficial when there is few competent and reliable supplier firms in the market. So if every firm's goal is to achieve value, to create the best for their customers. So when you realize there are few suppliers in the market, the best way you can capitalize on competition and the best way you can create value for customers is by developing closer relationships with those few suppliers in the market so as to be able to deliver the best to customers. Then we come to partnering decision. How benefit? So advantages for the buyer. There is greater stability of supply and supply prices because we are locked in with a specific supplier. There is also the sharing of risk and investment between both parties. There is better supplier motivation and responsiveness arising from mutual commitment and reciprocity. There is also cost savings from reduced supplier base, collaborative cost reduction, because in essence, partnering is where you are dealing with one or a few suppliers collaboratively and strategically to exchange goods and services. There is the ability to improve long-term improvements because partnering is where you learn from each other in terms of technological contribution, in terms of skills and competencies, so you are able to improve upon areas where you lack. However, there are downsides to partnering, one of which include risk of complacency, where the partner may feel like you've secured them, hence they tend to do whatever they want at the expense of the organization. There is less flexibility to change suppliers at need because you are locked into a relationship with just a single supplier and you don't have the luxury of supplier switching. There is also possible risk of confidentiality or loss of intellectual property because in partnering, because there is the investment in risk and information sharing, you are likely to expose or share certain information that you think might be useful for the information, which might be used at the expense of the organization by the supplier, then the buying firm might be locked into a relationship with an incompatible or inflexible supplier, because the supplier might not be willing to vary their operations to suit the trending discoveries made by the buyer, and this might be disadvantageous to the buyer. There is also the risk or cost of relationship management, because you have to day in and out learn from the suppliers' activities, their employees, learn about their culture, learn about how you can improve their performance over time. Then, in terms of the supplier, the advantages include greater stability and volume of business, because whatever business the buyer wants to do, they bring it to the supplier. There is the joint planning and information sharing. There is also the sharing of risk and investment. There is the working with customers, continuous working with customers to enable improved service and learning and development. There is also cost savings from efficiency, collaborative cost reduction, and payments on time, because the buyer does not want to do anything that would dissatisfy the supplier. So the payments are made as and when stated in the contract document. However, the disadvantages of partnering for the supplier include the supplier being locked into a relationship with an incompatible customer or the buyer. There is also the risk of the customer exploiting transparency, where information exchange is being used to the disadvantage of the supplier. And then there is also investment in relationship management. There is gains and risk may not be fairly shared in the relationship. That is when one begins to gain power at the expense of the other. And then dependency on customer may create loss of flexibility and control. Then if you have a portfolio of relationships, that is, you have a wide-ranging suppliers who supply you with different types of products and services, depending on the value that these suppliers have on the business, you need to adopt certain criteria which will help you to prioritize relationships with each of these suppliers. So one criteria has been proposed by Wilfred Pareto, and is known as the 80-20 rule, where you focus your investment on the 20% of suppliers who provide you with 80% of value, or the 20% of suppliers who provide 80% of total sales revenue. In essence, the critical few suppliers who provide you with high value items have to be prioritized in terms of relationship management than the trivial many who provide you with little impact or little value resources. Hence, the 80-20 rule proposed by Wilfred Pareto. In this session, you have learned about the factors that influence the type of relationship chosen, as well as some of the drivers of collaborative relationship. Thank you.